Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Here we are again, reading the Bhagavatam. We'd love to be outside. It's a sunny day, but it's also very windy and cold. So we're just opting for reading wherever we can read, whenever we can read. Hare Krishna.
All right.
So, like that.
It's Canto 4, Chapter 1. Canto 4, Chapter 1, Text 31. We'll most likely finish the chapter this today.
Oh, is it?
Well, it depends how much we talk. But we will.
There's a lot of pages.
I know.
This chapter. Okay, yep.
Om Namo
Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Oh, here you go again. Okay. Text 31. You will have sons who will represent a partial manifestation of our potency. And because we desire all good fortune for you, those sons will glorify your reputation throughout the world.
Haribol.
Text 32. Thus, while the couple looked on, the three deities, Brahma, Vishnu and Maheshwara, disappeared from that place after bestowing upon Atri Muni the benediction. Text 33. Thereafter, from the partial representation of Brahma, the moon god was born of them. From the partial representation of Vishnu, the great mystic Dattatreya was born. And from the partial representation of Shankara, Lord Shiva, Durvas was born. Now you may hear from me of the many sons of Angira. Text 34. Angira's wife Shraddha gave birth to 4 daughters named Sinivali, Kuhu, Raka and Anumati. Text 35. Besides these 4 daughters, she also had another 2 sons. One of them was known as Uttaya and the other was the learned scholar Brihaspati. Text 36. Pulatsya begot in his wife Haverabu, one son of the name Agastya, and another son of the name Agastya, who in his next birth became Dharagni. Besides him, Pulatsya begot another great and saintly son, whose name was Vishrava. Text 37. Vishrava had 2 wives. The first wife was Itavida, from whom Kuvera, the master of all Yakshas, was born, and the next wife was named Kashini, from whom 3 sons were born, Ravana, Kumbhakarna, and Vibhishan.
Yikes.
Yeah, that's the black seeds of the family. Black sheep. Text 38. Gati, the wife of the sage Pulaha, gave birth to 3 sons named Karmashreshta, Varian and Sahishnu. All of them were great sages. Purport. Gati, the wife of Pulaha, was the 5th daughter of Kardama Muni. She was very faithful to her husband, and all her sons were as good as he. So this is just showing the genealogical table of the daughters of Manu. Because we said, if you had like a flip chart or like a whiteboard, it's interesting, because then you see everyone fits in later on, like Ravan, Kumbhakarna, everyone, all the different sages. It's interesting to see how they all fit in, Brihaspati, Dattatreya, Durvas Muni. It's very interesting. You always have people in the family that you don't get on with in a bit trouble. So you could see it.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, just think, Ravana, Kumbhakarna were Jai and Vijay from the spiritual world, who came specifically to fight with the Lord, and who, because of whom, the Lord manifested and two forms that are ever glorified here on Nrsingadev and Varahadev. So, you know, that's, I mean, even the bad seeds or the black sheep, they can have some benefit. I guess like Vena, from King Vena, his bones.
Cruel Vena. That's what he's called. Cruel
Vena. Yeah, his bones were churned, and from him came Prithu Maharaj. So, like that. Text 40.
No, 39.
Oh, okay, yeah. Kratu's wife, Kriya, gave birth to 60,000 great sages named the Valakilyas. 60,000 kids.
Jeepers.
At one time, I guess, or maybe, I don't know. All these sages were greatly advanced in spiritual knowledge, and their bodies were illuminated by such knowledge. Purport. Kriya was the 6th daughter of Kardama Muni, and she produced 60,000 sages who were known as the Valakilyas, because they all retired from family life as vanaprasthas. Okay, so obviously this word Valakilyas has something to do with retiring from family life or being a vanaprastha.
Text 40. The great sage Vasishta begot in his wife Uja, sometimes called Arundhati, 7 spotlessly great sages, headed by the sage named Chitraketu. Text 41. The names of these 7 sages are as follows: Chitraketu, Suruchi, Viraja, Mitra, Ulbana, Vashu, Bridhyana, and Diyuman. Some other very competent sons were born from Vasishta's other wife. Proper. Uja, who is sometimes known as Arundhati and was the wife of Vasishta, was the 9th daughter of Kardama Muni. Okay.
Anything?
No.
Yeah, Arundhati and Vasishta. Yeah, for some reason I'm thinking that there's a pastime, maybe won't get into that here, but lots of these names are mentioned here at the beginning, but as you were saying later, you see that it comes up.
It's interesting.
Arundhati. Yeah. Chiti, wife of the sage Atharva, gave birth to a son named Ashwashira by accepting a great vow called Dadyancha. Now you may hear from me about the descendants of the sage Brigu. Purport. The wife of Atharva, known as Chiti, is also known as Shanti. She was the 8th daughter of Kardama Muni. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Text 43. The sage Brigu was highly fortunate. In his wife, known as Kiyati, he begot 2 sons, named Datta and Vidatta, and 1 daughter named Shri, who was very much devoted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 44. The sage Meru had 2 daughters, named Ayati and Niyati, whom he gave in charity to Datta and Vidatta. Ayati and Niyati gave birth to 2 sons, Mrikanda and Prana. Text 45. From Mrikanda, Markandeya Muni was born, and from Prana, the sage Vedashira, whose son was Ushana, in bracket Shukracharya, also known as Kavi. Thus Kavi also belonged to the descendants of the Brigu dynasty. Text 46 and 47. My dear Vidura, the population of the universe was thus increased by the descendants of these sages and the daughters of Kardama. Anyone who hears the descriptions of this dynasty with faith will be relieved from all sinful reactions. Wow. Another of Manu's daughters, known as Prasuti, married the son of Brahma named Daksha.
Now we're starting to set the scene.
Text 48. Daksha begot 16 very beautiful daughters with lotus-like eyes in his wife Prasuti. Of these 16 daughters, 13 were given in marriage to Dharma, and 1 daughter was given to Agni. Cheapers. Text 49 to 52. One of the remaining 2 daughters was given in charity to the Pritraloka, where she resides very amicably, and the other was given to Lord Shiva, who is the deliverer of sinful persons from material entanglement. The names of the 13 daughters of Daksha who were given to Dharma are Shraddha, Maitri, Daya, Shanti, Tusti, Pushti, Kriya, Unati, Buddhi, Meda, Titiksha, Ri, and Mruti. These 13 daughters produced the following sons. Shraddha gave birth to Subha, Maitri produced Prasada, Daya gave birth to Abhaya, Shanti gave birth to Shuka, Tusti gave birth to Muda, Pushti gave birth to Smaya, Kriya gave birth to Yoga, Unati gave birth to Dapa, Buddhi gave birth to Artha, Meda gave birth to Smiti, Titiksha gave birth to Kashema, and Ri gave birth to Prashraya. Murti, a reservoir of all respectful qualities, gave birth to Sri Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 53. On the occasion of the appearance of Narayan, the entire world was full of joy. Everyone's mind became tranquil, and thus in all directions the air, the rivers, and the mountains became pleasant. Text 54 to 55. In the heavenly planets, bands began to play, and they showered flowers from the sky. The pacified sages chanted Vedic prayers. The denizens of heaven, known as the Gandharvas and Kinnaras, sang. The beautiful damsels of the heavenly planets danced, and in this way, at the time of the appearance of Narayan, all signs of good fortune were visible. Just at that time, great demigods like Brahma also offered their respectful prayers. Text 56. The demigods said, "Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto the transcendental personality of Godhead, who created as his external energy this cosmic manifestation, which is situated in him as the air and clouds are situated in space, and who has now appeared in the form of Narayan Rishi in the house of Dharma." The universal form of the Lord is the cosmic manifestation, which is an exhibition of the external energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In space there are innumerable varieties of planets and also the air, and in the air there are variously colored clouds, and sometimes we see airplanes running from one place to another. Thus the entire cosmic manifestation is full of variety, but actually that variety is a manifestation of the external energy of the Supreme Lord, and that energy is situated in him. Now the Lord himself, after manifesting his energy, appeared within the creation of his energy, which is simultaneously one with and different from himself. And therefore the demigods offered their respects to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who manifests himself in such varieties. There are some philosophers called non-dualists who, because of their impersonal conception, think that varieties are false. In this verse it is specifically stated, Yo Mayaya Vicharitam. This indicates that the varieties are a manifestation of the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, because the energy is non-different from the Godhead, the varieties are also factual. The material varieties may be temporary, but they are not false. They are a reflection of the spiritual varieties. Here the word Pratichaksanaya, there are varieties, announces the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who appeared as Narayan Rishi and who is the origin of all varieties of material nature. Well, isn't it interesting? For one thing, we're speaking about Nara Narayan because he is a form of the Lord, so we have to acknowledge that. And we see here that, for example, the verse is explaining that when he appeared, you know, Gandharvas and Kinnaras were singing, everyone was peaceful, so many auspicious signs. It wasn't just, oh yeah, that listing everything, oh, and she gave birth to a form of the Lord. It just thought it was interesting, just as we get space given to other
great personalities,
forms of the Lord. I mean, obviously Krishna gets a large space in this as Krishna, but you know, just because normally Nara Narayan isn't a form that is highlighted, you know, like Nrsimha. I mean, like that, we know Nrsimhadev, we know Lord Ramchandra, Varahadev, Vamanadev. It's not one that comes up in popular culture, as it were. Oh yeah, Nara Narayan. So I just thought it was interesting space has been given to acknowledge and glorify him. I also thought it was interesting how, and it says the entire, in a purport, the entire cosmic manifestation is just one of the Lord's energies. And it was just making me think how, like, you have, say, philosophers, speculators, or scientists, maybe they're all the same thing, really. Scientists are speculators, and they're just too busy still to this day trying to figure out this vast cosmic manifestation, which is pretty amazing when you think about the vast space and that there are planets, and people pass it off as just, yeah, there's nothing going on there. Why is it there? You know, it's like if something's removed internally from your body, like your spleen or your appendix or something, it may be like you can continue living, but there's a reason why it was in there, what function it was. Or if you remove other bodily parts, some payoff is there and another part of the body. I speak from experience, not that I had my spleen or appendix, but anyway, there is a payoff, as it were. Everything is there for a reason. So people, I just find it fascinating how just to look at the planets, I find anyway very fascinating, and the stars and the space, and yet that's just Krishna's separating material energy. It's, you know, it's not that it's him, it's amazing, but it's not even his him in full Godhead mode, if that makes, you know, he's got quite a lot more to offer. If that makes, you know, when people, we just can't get beyond that, if that makes sense, and denounce that there's no one behind that. Can you think there's no one behind that? And you know, I find that quite interesting.
Yeah, this form of Nara Narayan for me has always been a little eluding, because actually it's discussed as being Nara Narayan, but, and it says Nara Narayan Rishi here, but often it's they, not he, are referred to Nara Narayan Rishis, plural, but it's one incarnation. And sometimes you see a picture where there's two of them and they're identical. It's also understood Nara Narayan Rishi is a manifestation of Krishna and Arjuna, because you have Nara, which means human or man, and Narayan, which means God. So it's actually that incarnation is of two. Now, just wondering whether the manifestation of the Lord is the Narayan part and Nara is the Jiva part. You know, one is Vishnu Tattva, one is Jiva Tattva. But this incarnation is referred to actually periodically, because as far as I'm aware, this incarnation of the Lord is still manifest on this planet in the Himalayas. And sages and sadhus who go into the Himalayas to perform tapasya and, tapasya. Excuse me, they can come in contact with him, just as Srila Vyasadeva is evidently still also manifest in the Himalayas. So like that. Also, when we recite these prayers, we did it sometimes at the beginning. We started to, and it'd be nice if we got into the habit of also reciting these prayers before we read Bhagavatam. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudiyat nasta praishva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevya bhagavatu tamashloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. That this Narayanam namaskritya refers to Narayan Rishi. So like that. So it would be nice to learn more about them, because actually they are quite prominent. Later, I think it's in the 11th canto, Indra tries to curse them by sending dancing girls to allure them.
Damn those dancing girls.
And they manifest. No, he sends Cupid to allure them, them, and they manifest all these beautiful damsels that actually allures Cupid somehow. So that's there, and yeah. Anyway, there's lots of different pastimes. Markandeya Rishi, I think, also has an interaction with Narayan Rishi, and periodically this manifestation of the Lord pops up throughout the Bhagavatam. So like that. Should we finish there?
Yes.
Okay. Hare Krishna. So we didn't quite get to the end, but we got very close. And
I feel what to say, when I first read the Bhagavatam, when I was going through these sections, and there are other sections like this where they list this one married this one, and then this one had this many kids, and I used to find it fascinating, thinking that if you could like look for your kids' names like that, because sometimes you don't know what to name them. And you're like, all these different names. I used to think, oh, interesting. Especially if you want something not so obvious, like Radha, Krishna. That. Yeah, I just remember thinking, I used to look at it and think, all these different names, jeepers, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I used to find it pretty boring, to be honest, and almost just try to breeze through it as quickly as possible, like this one. And I thought, I'm never going to remember any of it. Most of the names I can't even pronounce. And then later, I think, this was going through the Bhagavatam again, I was kind of realizing that it's beneficial to read these names. And if you were actually going deeper, you'd understand the connection. And every time you hear a name, somehow in that lineage, it seems to go to a point where a special personality is introduced. But then I also remember hearing in a class, or someone mentioned that there's a lot of benefit in just reading these names, even if you don't understand them. And then we see that there's what's called, I think I mentioned this before, a shruti pal, a fruit of the hearing, which comes, we can see in text 147, we read, anyone who hears the description of this dynasty with faith. So then we have to also listen and hear this with faith, that there's benefit in it for me, and also by hearing this, it's there's something for me to be gained here, a deepening of my relationship with Krishna. So if we hear it with faith, we'll be relieved of all sinful reactions. Well, Nitai go Premanandi, I mean, who doesn't need that? And yeah, like that. So that's a shruti, I think it's called a shruti.
A little nugget.
A little nugget of nectar there. There's a benediction. Okay, so to all the nuggets out there, we will finish now. And thank you very much. Please remember to like,
comment,
subscribe,
and share.
Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai.